Hello and welcome to our Tuesday discussion with Professor Annette Menzel of the Technical University in Munich. My name is Christoph Mauch. I'm the director of the Rachel Carson Center for Environment and Society. And together with Dr. Gesa Lüdecke, the director of graduate programs, I'm moderating and convening the Tuesday discussions. We're alternating, and so today it's my turn. I'm very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have Annette Menzel here. She's a neighbor of the Rachel Carson Center. We're at LMU. She's at the Technical University, but neighborhood is relative because the campus where she's located is in the very north of Munich, in Freising, actually, in the city north of Munich. Annette Menzel is originally studied forestry, and she studied forestry when the forestry faculty was still, I think it was faculty 14 at LMU, 13 or 14. And unfortunately, we lost faculty 13 or 14 because the whole faculty moved from the LMU to the Technical University. And so you've been in both universities, you know both worlds, and could probably tell us a lot about the difference of the two worlds. But I thought it was really interesting to learn when we first had contact a long time ago. I was already amazed that you are not just a scholar, but you started out as a forester. So you were a state forester of the Bavarian state. And your first scientific research projects were about beech trees in Lower Bavaria. And you also did some research in Chile, in the Instituto Forestal de Chile in Concepción, the city of Concepción. So you know the world, you know the globe, both Southern Hemisphere and Bavaria. And in a way, I think your first position was in, at that time it was called bioclimatology at LMU, and now it's in ecoclimatology. And I think that's a typical, I mean, we've all moved from bio to eco in a way. But you've always been interested in climate. Your PhD was about the impact of climate change on forest trees. And that is also perhaps the reason, I think that PhD got the German Forestry Award. And that is also the reason why you were asked a long time ago as one of the first people to be a lead author of the IPCC report on climate change. So Professor Menzel is an expert on climate ecology, one of the leading experts. But today we invited her because recently the Bavarian government published the results of an expert panel that was interested in the future of water supply in Bavaria. And when I read about it, it's been published, and when I read about it, I thought it's so interesting. I mean, we all want to learn about the future of water. I mean, water and oil are the most important things on this globe. And I took the opportunity to ask Annette, Professor Menzel, to join us, and she immediately agreed to join us. It's unfortunately on Zoom because of the pandemic, but we're so happy to have you here. And so please join me in thanking Professor Menzel for joining us today and presenting.
Many thanks for this kind introduction. And I'm happy to tell you something about the future of water in Bavaria today. I've just prepared a small presentation of around 10 minutes, I was asked. And if you allow, I would start.
Wonderful.
Okay. So this is the future of the water supply in Bavaria. And as you mentioned, there was this expert commission set up by the Bavarian state government to research on that. And this was in September 2020. And the main aim was to put suggestions how to make the water future in the Free State of Bavaria fit for the future. So what are the main challenges for water? This would be my first point. Then I will talk about the goals and the fields of action, and then talk about chances and options for Bavaria, and then about some of these recommendations we have listed for the politics in Bavaria. So the whole thing is embedded in a national water strategy. And this national water strategy, it's only still a draft of our Federal Ministry for Environment. And this was proposed to the public in June last year. And the vision is to protect natural water resources and to do a sustainable treatment with water and to ensure that water is safe for all life and all economic fields in Germany. And the suggestion of this ministry was to put into hand 1 billion euro for this purpose, to make water fit for climate change. And in the next 10 years, they spoke about 100 million euro. So what is the main idea? So you see, we are in the midst of climate change. Climate change is happening. It's affecting temperature, precipitation patterns, affecting agriculture, forestry, human health, and everything. And all these different items, they are connected to water. And in this national water strategy, there are 10 main topics, and they range from more social aspects, so raise awareness, to more technical ones, better infrastructure, connect biogeochemical cycles, decrease risks, and so on. So it's a very, very broad topic. I just wanted to show you with some pictures the main ideas of this national strategy. So the first point is that our water cycle has to be nature-like back again. Why? Because we have this huge transformation of our landscapes, eroded everything, hedges are gone, we have maize everywhere, huge problems with erosion, and if we have heavy precipitation events, then all the soil is gone. So it's very clear that in May you can just wait for things like this to happen. Then we are facing urbanization. You know, on the globe, more than 50% of people already live in cities, and our German population, also in Bavaria, is in principle perhaps a shrinking one in the future, but it's very imbalanced. You have regions also in Bavaria. You see it here in the northeast, where we have a shrinking population, and they are all concentrated around Munich. And both shrinking and increasing populations have a huge pressure on infrastructure. However, the infrastructure we have at the moment in all the water sector, it's pretty old. And we have perhaps the global examples in mind that London, they are losing water in their pipelines. This also happens in Germany. So all these canals, they are not sealed anymore. You have sewage water entering the groundwater, or other way around, that groundwater enters the sewage pipelines. And this old infrastructure is a problem because the main costs, it's not about the water or the energy, it's about the personnel, it's about depreciation or interest. So it's this infrastructure, this old one, is a real problem. Then we have risk by contamination. And you all will remember the contamination by nitrate in the groundwater, which is a huge problem in many parts of Bavaria and also Germany. Plus, we have other contaminants. This could be bacteria, virus, microplastic, and pharmaceuticals, and many others. So small doses, huge effect, difficult to determine by chemical analysis, and almost no idea of what to do against them. This has huge pressure on our drinking water supply. So here you see a map of Bavaria with all these different wells, and the water is coming largely from deep groundwater wells. These are the orange ones, but to the northeast here we also have water wells which are open, so open sources, I would say. And this is also a bit of a risk for Bavaria. So we have more than 4,000 wells, and 17% here have these different sources of water. And the higher the source of the water is to the surface, the more likely it is that in dry periods, when we have this combination of drought and heat waves, we will have water shortages. And what we know from the developing world, that you need a lorry to bring water here as a tank. This has already happened in Bavaria. And just to show you one example of what we are doing, how to show also the pressure on these water resources is for we had several heat waves in the last year, 2003, 15, 18, and 19. And the 15 one, the next year, we had dying pine trees around Nuremberg here. And you see that these pine trees, if you analyze their tree rings, they have been suffering since the 1990s. And those one who decreased their growth were then dying after this last heat wave. And with that, we have more and more cutting in our forests, and we have these extreme events due to storm, wind, insects, and others. And you really see here these empty spaces, a lot of forest gone. And this has then implications also for the water cycle, since the land use, the land cover is altered. How to show these people working in agriculture and forestry about our future? And you could do the same for people working in the water sector. This is the climate, which is very similar to the region around Nuremberg at the moment. In the future, under a very bad and harsh scenario, the future climate of Nuremberg could be found at the moment in regions such as southern France, Provence, or here Italy, around the Adria coast. And what they are planting at the moment are vegetables. And this means in the future could be lavendel. And these are the pictures where they think of, the future might be quite different, and this also implies for our water sector. So with that, we have conflicts about agriculture, irrigation, more water needed for cities, for drinking water, for processed water, cooling water. We are very afraid about not meeting ecological minimum flows in our rivers. And we have to think whether everything has to be drinking water quality in the future. So how does the water strategy for Bavaria looks like? We have 5 points. So making the landscape water budget and cycle resilient to climate, to store and to distribute water across Bavaria, to protect drinking water, to think about a clever development of cities, the urbanized areas, and to make ecosystem functions of rivers and lakes resilient. So we have the 2 pressures, which are climate change and altered land use. And then we define these 4 main areas to act. And so there is a mission thing, is that the water supply is not a constant anymore with this climate change, and we have to make everything resilient. Technical solutions alone are not enough. So we have to really think about the landscape. And therefore, the title of our expert report was Land, not only the state of Bavaria, but the landscape is the means to create water, to store water, and to distribute water with more extremes in both directions. So we talked about the stressors, how to stabilize the thing, and about the necessary consents and society. And the main ideas is our agriculture should be different. We need mulch, we need intercropping to just protect the soils, to increase infiltration, to diminish and decrease evaporation, to hold more water in the soils, more humus, less irrigation, less drainage. Also, same would apply for forested areas. In the landscape, then you need more of these decentralized storages, more hedges to lower down wind speeds, more protection around the rivers and lakes, and planning of everything is the point where to start with. And now how to distribute water. So in Bavaria, we always have the upper Bavarian perspective of 2,000 millimeters of rain, but what we have in Franconia is around 550 millimeters. And this means that in a hot summer, the situation is a bit like Greece. So with that, the Bavarian state started to transport water from the Danube catchment via this Rhein-Main-Donau Canal to Franconia. And this plus set up this lake system here of Altmühlsee, Krombachsee to also bring water through the European divide on the other side. And this rescued Franconia in many of these dry, extreme years. But now they have to increase the system of bringing water from the south to north. What can they do? Building new lakes is not an option, but they can increase the storage capacity here, increase the capacity of bringing water to the north, optimize the whole system. You see here, these are the main areas where we have irrigation in Bavaria, and it's not only here in Franconia, it's also around the Danube River here, where a lot of water is needed. And the main problem is that the groundwater tables are shrinking, they are going down. And now they think that a sustainable recharge of groundwater is not given anymore, and therefore it's a real conflict about this irrigation water. Then this report also has a long list of what to do to protect our drinking water. And the main idea is to have resilient double structure backup structures that if something fails, you have another way to provide drinking water to the Bavarian population. This also includes transport of water from far systems here also to the north, to really think about the future balances, to assure a good drinking water quality with larger protection areas around the drinking water wells. These persistent organic compounds, which we cannot treat afterwards. So the intake has to be reduced already against zero, and more or less switch from a demand to a supply management in drinking water. This is a nice example how climate change, water, and agriculture are linked. So with climate change, we have a longer vegetation period. We need more water, we have more evapotranspiration, but less precipitation in summer. We have more pests and diseases, we have more extreme events, and all directly or indirectly lead to a decreasing supply, a higher demand with more conflicts, and all in all, you have always the danger of decreasing yields. Cities have to be sponge cities with a lot of green and blue infrastructure. So get precipitation stored somewhere, increase biodiversity, help with a hot city climate, reduce the sealing of the surfaces, think about water recycling, grey water, and many other things in this direction. Also, the ecosystem functions. So what we should do is, according to the Water Framework Directive of the EU to have an ecological and chemical good status of our rivers and lakes, but this is not the case at the moment. So the problems are these low flow conditions, that we have a lot of wires and structures, so the rivers are cut in different parts. The alluvial forests, they are also cut from the main riverbed. What we need is more protection at the sides of the rivers and minimizing the intake of persistent compounds. So this is when we handed over our report to the Ministry of Environment and Consumer Protection, Mr. Glauber. And these are the long lists of what we think are the goals of a secure water future in Bavaria. I think I will pass the slides also to you so you can read it in detail. And what is the point is we calculated a bit of how much investment costs might be needed to really do that. And talking about infrastructure, could be 6 billion euros. Optimizing the sewage treatments with a fourth step would be another 700 million euros. The Water Framework Directive would be 2.7 billion euros. So you need money to tackle the problem. And these are the 8 colleagues having worked for that. And nice point, if you want to have a look at this, unfortunately it's in German, as you have seen with the slides. You could go to www.waterwasser.tum.de and then you find the report. With that, many, many thanks for listening. And I'm happy to discuss with you.